Good evening, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer located in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I've been a practicing astrologer for 34 years, and I do readings. I do take students, um, but you do have to pay for readings. Okay, so just to get that out of the way. But contact me to find out rates and things like that. My phone number is 508-525-0001. I'll be happy to talk with you and figure out. It's again 508-525-0001. It's not really printing, but it's 508-525-0001. So I'm not sure quite why it's not printing out the full 9-digit. How many digits is a phone number? 9 digits, 9-digit code. But yeah, I'm gonna start really quickly. I will be talking about what's happened over the past week with President Biden and what just happened with former President Trump. Uh, as I'm recording this, I just received word there was an assassination or there was a shooting on him uh, today. And it was interesting because um, all day yesterday and today, I felt this really what I would call angry energy all around, affecting me, affecting pretty much everybody I encountered. And not all people, of course. Some people have good self-restraint. Uh, but I want to pull up Donald Trump's chart and just talk about this with you for a second, because it is a big deal. And one of the things that strikes me about this is I actually predicted this months ago. I thought it was going to happen more towards August, but or September, August, September, October, but I think this is not really going to be the last assassination attempt on him over the next few months. So prepare yourself for kind of a bumpy ride. Um, I think so. I'm going to try to share the chart with you right now. And even if you don't like Trump, um, an assassination attempt is a significant thing. It's an extremely significant thing. So so remember I said this to the 2024 reminded me a lot of 1968, the 1968 campaign. And we're getting parallels all over the place. So I'm going to pull up Donald Trump's chart again. I had it up for a second and then I closed it. Be an error. So let me pull it up again, so I can share with you what happened here. So this is a more immediate thing. That's why I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about Biden for a little bit. Uh, then I'm going to talk about uh, the chart for the week, for the world, and for you in particular, and also where I'm expecting problems. So this is Donald Trump's chart. It seems to be fairly accurate from everything, every event that's happened. There is a transit of K2 over the second house right now. K2 is, in Vedic astrology, is considered to be very much like Mars. It can lead to eliminations. It passed over the Lord of his Mahadasha, Jupiter. So you see right here, he's in a major planetary period of Jupiter, K2 subperiod, which makes him vulnerable to unexpected attacks. It looked like it clipped his, from the shot that I saw, and I don't know if there's any more extensive damage. It looked like it clipped his right ear from the television. So let's go over here and look at we're going to swap this and look at the transit chart. So Saturn he's in a Venus Saturn subperiod. That's a 12th house subperiod. And Saturn, for Trump's chart, that's a Saturn subperiod. Let me get the screen off. And Saturn is, number one, is a death-inflicting planet for Trump's chart. And Venus, although not a death-inflicting planet for Trump's chart, so it rules the 7th house. That's what I'm talking about. The other death-inflicting planet for this particular chart is Mercury, okay? And Jupiter is also a death-inflicting planet because it's placed in the 2nd house. So we're in a Saturn-Venus-Saturn subperiod. So it's not surprising there would be some kind of attempt or some kind of assault during this particular period. Saturn can sometimes take out a person. It's not really as reliable as K2 on Mars. But let's look at where the transits are now. So this is based upon New Bedford. So like I said, I'm just going right into this. All right, so Mars is aspecting Trump's 1st house now. So that'll be in that particular sign for the next 2.5 months. So that makes it very dangerous for him. It makes it a very dangerous period for him. And like I said, I won't be surprised if you don't see it. I won't be surprised if you see more assassination attempts or attempts at personal violence against Donald Trump. Saturn's aspecting his 1st house. Saturn's in the 7th house. It's not good for him. It's very dangerous. If he makes it through, swap back to his birth chart. He's in a Jupiter K2 subperiod right now. So K2 is located in his 4th house, which has to do with status or success. Saturn's aspecting that 4th house because it casts aspects 3, 7. It's also aspecting his 1st house and 10 signs away. So you have both Saturn and Mars aspecting his 10th house, his 1st house. So that's dangerous for him. That's a very dangerous period for him. The Sun subperiod should be somewhat safer for him. The one thing that's interesting is that Jupiter is a planet which rules the ears, and that's where it looks like he got shot. I don't have the full details, but that's where it looks like he got shot. So this is interesting. And then we look at the chart. So I just want to broach that. So it's been a heck of a week. First of all, with Biden, with people trying to convince Biden to quit, and Biden sticking in there. And it looks like that particular threat is held in abeyance, but over the next couple of days, they can, they could still convince him to, they just, thank you, my friends. All right. All right. So I'm thinking that, because I'm trying to get the screen, trying to stop the screen sharing for a second and trying to pull up Joe Biden's chart. So let me see if I can pull up Joe Biden's chart. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's fairly simple astrology. There's a risk of a shot. His first house, which is connected with life, is under threat. And I think really the main thing that's protecting him right now is Jupiter in the same sign with the sun. Um, and so Biden still could be convinced to pull out after this weekend, but he's showing signs of resistance. And he has shown signs of resistance all week long, and some of the press are backing off. Um, and I want to look at, I'd love to look at something for that. So let's look at Joe Biden's chart. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I'm getting some. Um, right. So let's look at Joseph Robinette Biden, and we'll see what's happening with his chart. So some astrologers have predicted that neither um, Biden nor Trump would make it to the final election. Let me see if I can get Joe Biden's chart. He'll be in there. Hold on a second. Why is he not showing up? Unless I had him under President Biden. Last week, maybe I had him under Joe. 1 second. I'm looking him up. Sorry about this, folks. heck is he? My past John Glenn's chart. Hold on a second. Maybe he's under Joe. Yeah, he's under Joe Biden. Okay. All right. So sorry about that, folks. All right. So this is Joe Biden's chart. Um, you'll see it in a second. And let's stop the share again. We're gonna get back to the sharing. It doesn't automatically take place on. All right, so we're sharing the chart right now. So he's had a kind. All right, so if he doesn't drop out by, I would say by the 16th, he's not going to drop out. And I think so. He's in a Jupiter Saturn subperiod. They might try to remove him around July 23rd. That's a possibility. But an exalted Jupiter leaves him with the conviction that he's right. You know, that's the downside. And the Jupiter is retrograde, the same as it is in Trump's chart. So they're both very stubborn individuals. I'm not comparing them morally, ethically, or spiritually. I'm just comparing their personalities. And in Biden's chart, Saturn is aspecting the sun, so he'll want to keep that placement of power. Um, he's There are two possible times he would leave. I would say around July 23rd if he does leave, or feeling that it would be around August 20th with this K2 subgrid. And the main reason for that is because K2 is in his fourth house. It can indicate a removal from power. The moon's kind of a weak planet in Biden's chart. It's well placed from the sun. That's actually not the problem. You know, it's actually a better place from the sun than Trump's full moon is. But it's it's not really. It gives him a lot of enemies. The moon subcareer is going to give him a lot of enemies. And like I said, I don't see it getting much better for him over the next few months. It's possible because this Jupiter period is going to be sort of up and down in terms of public assessment of him. But I also think, in all honesty, that essentially seeing um, he's being propped up by that Jupiter. When Saturn comes, he won't be propped up anymore. That's really so. If we're looking at the past week and what happened to him, he's in this. He was in this Jupiter sort of different levels. It was in a Rahu subperiod before July 10th. So Rahu essentially, one thing that Rahu does do, I've noticed in charts, is it does tend to give people an unrealistic estimate of their chances. If they can maintain that, um, if they can maintain that, maintain that. If they can maintain that, um, if they can maintain that power uh, of of frustration um, and expectation, they'll do okay. Um, I think that this Rahu subperiod leading into this Jupiter subperiod, July 10th start of the Jupiter subperiod, it's July 13th now. Um, yeah, Jupiter's sort of like, again, like I said, it'll kind of rescue him for a while. But then Saturn's sort of like a big dose of reality as a planet. So I don't know if he's going to stick in there. My gut is telling me just because he's a stubborn individual, he'll try to stay as long as he can. Um, and I think, at least from this chart, trying to do a good job of analyzing. That's why I'm freezing up folks. So one, I'm looking at the Navamsha chart, which is the chart of luck. One, two, three, and career chart. Yeah, the Mars subperiod in the career chart doesn't look really good for him. Um, he might be subject to an assassination attempt or a serious illness after September 15th. So it's really risky to stay in this particular race. Not that I'm thinking that anybody should drop out because of this, but these subperiods don't look good for Joe. If we're looking at his friends, so we're talking about the vice president. The vice president does have a good chance of taking over the position. Uh, and as I've told a lot of Scorpio risings to watch out for their friends. Their friends will betray them or turn on them in a particular period. So this is going to be interesting to watch. So I'm not. I mean, I think one of the things is that the inevitability of somebody dropping out is is dramatically overstated, although it's more likely for Biden to drop out than Trump, just because of the nature of how the Democratic Party works. The Democratic Party, this is just based on observation. They're less tolerant of taking chances with elections than the Republicans are. So that's why you're seeing this movement right now. I think that, but again, I think it's a little bit. I know, at least in this chart, I think in this chart we have a very interesting dynamic because we have somebody who's stubborn against somebody who's stubborn. So, but again, Biden is not as much of a target for an assassin as just because of the different planetary transits going over the charts. Now let's look at the week to come. Sorry, I was pausing so much in that presentation, but I was trying to uh, do different things which I should not have been doing. And I was also trying to give you a careful assessment. So this Mars aspect on Mercury and Venus um, in Cancer, pretty dangerous. Mars is in Venus's sign. Venus is in Cancer. Um, and Mars is really not aspecting Venus and Mercury anymore, but it is in the same sign with Jupiter. So this indicates what I would call a violent resolution to problems. Okay, so we saw the NATO conference piling up, and they're offering more weapons to Ukraine over the past week. So that's a function of that Mars-Jupiter conjunction. It hadn't yet occurred. It only occurred today, but basically that's the prelude to it. The other thing is Venus and Mercury. Mercury is about to go retrograde, so we will see a lot of backtracking in the news stories that have taken place. We'll see some more critical assessments of people in the news. We'll see more upsets in elections. Now, this could involve the U.S. election as well, but this Moon K2 conjunction right here, very prone to violence. Everybody's a little bit uptight today, and that's really what caused. I had a personal experience also. Rahu and Ketu are stationary direct, which is unusual. Significant events happen on stationary direct. Rahu and Ketu's. That's why I like to use the true nodes. Uh, most traditional Vedic astrologers would just take these as being always retrograde, which has its merits too. So I'm not saying it's useless. If we want to include the outer planets, Mars is really close to Uranus. It can give upsetting events, upsetting or shocking events. I'm not really shocked that um, that there was an attempt from, and if it took place in that particular form, it looked like an assassination attempt. So with the chart right now, over the next week, this is the U.S.'s ascendant. There'll be a lot of talk about guns and violence and all this other stuff. And there'll also be a lot of aggravation, some possible violence, some possible civil disruption. I hope that doesn't happen because of Jupiter aspect in Ketu. Saturn is Saturn and Rahu's proximity. We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. Um, the eclipse points, which I never talk about, to be honest with you, and I probably should. Let me look at the last eclipse points quickly. Hold on a second. Let's see. Cool. Let's look at that and see what's going on with that. All right, so Jupiter's, so this isn't the eclipse. Hold on. No, this is the eclipse. My apologies. So essentially, Jupiter's close to the moon. K2 is stationary direct, but it's not close to the eclipse point. Um, Let me look and see which charts are. I'm going to swap this. We're not going to go back to Joe Biden's chart, but let's see. Yeah, we can do this. We're going to do a now chart again. Sorry for flipping all over the place. So K2, so when this happened, the moon was close to the eclipse point, or it was shadowing the eclipse point over here in Virgo, which is in Trump's second house. So that would tend to um, mirror significant events happening around eclipse points in the chart. The sun is nowhere near it. Jupiter is close to an eclipse point, though, by degree. So at least from the chart, you can at least see one of the things I'd encourage people to do is over the next few weeks, just be really careful about what kind of advice you give to people. Be really careful about people being angry with you because they'll have sort of a hair trigger uh, temper. They'll also be a bit more of a justification for violence to resolve problems. I actually saw today a fight take place right in front of my store, which is normally not a very active place for such things to happen. And these two people just wouldn't stop. They just really wouldn't stop. And one of the things I thought was significant about was that it was two women who were fighting. It was an actual physical fight. So it's really going to be easy to get into arguments with people. It's really going to be easy to get into disagreements with people. Um, I had that experience this morning, and I won't go into the details of it to respect the person's privacy. But it wasn't a person. It wasn't a person uh, in my family. It was somebody outside of it. And I think one of the things you'll have to watch out for is this Mars and Taurus tends to make us very stubborn. Mercury in Cancer tends to make us think with our feelings. Uh, so essentially, how we feel about a situation is going to dictate how we act. And so rather than figuring things out slowly and rationally, um, and again, I don't know if you've heard about this, but there have been at least two people who've gone on record saying it would be a good idea to kill Trump. One was an actress, and one was, I believe, a reporter from the BBC. So I think that kind of energy is in the air. This has been this is something which is so be careful. Even be careful what you think about because thoughts do manifest. This is not a fantasy world we live in. Um, if we look at the Navamsha chart for when I'm doing this particular Navamsha chart has Mercury along with an exalted Mars in the first house. Now this wasn't the chart that we had earlier because when I started, the Uh, the ascendant was in Sagittarius, but has since moved to Capricorn. So let's see what this is about. This is about security, stability. Rahu, desire, is also about K2 moon and essentially a shifting of governments or shifting of leadership and even some deceit coming from leadership. So I'm not accusing anybody within the current government of causing this particular event. That is not uh, what this is connected to. But I think one of the things that happens is Jupiter does tend to give violent acts permission to happen, especially if it's with Mars and K2 will seem like the right thing to do. So again, that's what I'm saying. Just be very, very cautious. In terms of markets, in terms of inflation, things like inflation will tend to be relatively moderate. This isn't a lot of inflationary pressure right now. That'll probably shift as we get a little bit closer to the fall. And this Venus Mercury conjunction in the seventh house, and with Mercury about to turn retrograde within a few days, you'll see a lot of miscommunication, a lot of errors being made. So I think this really is like the key part of the chart. And this Jupiter aspecting Mercury, Moon and Mercury, it is going to get a lot of coverage, obviously. And the sixth house, the sun being in the sixth house, is an attempt to hurt leaders. So it's an attempt to hurt um, both individuals who are running for the presidency right now. Any individual who's running for the presidency right now, any interesting to see what happens in Iran over the next few days. So is going to make it and and become the reform president. So this is kind of fascinating, but again, keep in mind that you're going to see a lot of political violence over the next couple of months, I'm afraid. And it's I understand it, but I still think it's really incredibly bad news for the world at large because this is the type of stuff which can trigger, uh, especially if people feel threatened. So this is really going to be a dangerous couple of months. It doesn't mean you should stay inside your houses, cowering behind your computers or your cell phones or TV sets. It just means be careful traveling, be careful. The moon will be in Libra tomorrow, so that'll be better. Okay. And Venus rules Libra. There'll be an exchange of lords um, between the moon and Venus. So things will calm down a lot tomorrow, I think. But that Mars, Jupiter, I still worry about that because that's the kind of stuff that's really not good. It can really make violence seem to be an appropriate resolution to any problem. So that having been said, and again, this is a little bit difficult for things like earthquakes and the Moon K2 conjunction is a little bit difficult for earthquakes. We had a minor earthquake in Turkey I won't say a minor, it was an earthquake in Turkey last week. And we've seen quakes in California and things like that. And this Mars and Taurus will make that more of a possibility for volcanic activity too. More of a possibility for violent crime. It's going to be an interesting couple of months. and it'll be capped off with an eclipse on October 2nd. So um, these are interesting. In some ways, it's good that something like this is, although it's never good to have an assassination attempt, in some ways it's good for this to happen early because that depressurizes the event and the likelihood that it'll be successful. So um, I think regardless of what you feel about Trump or Biden, I don't think anybody wants to see them killed uh, before before the election. Or maybe a lot of you do, I don't know. But I have no desire to see that happen. It's it doesn't improve things. Let's put it that way. It doesn't make things better, right? So let's move through the respective signs. I don't want to be all doomy and gloomy. Let's move through the respective signs. But that was a bit of a not really a surprise, but happening earlier than I expected an event. Okay. Um, and again, he's still in danger. So let's see now. So we have for Aries this week. Um, again, watch your temper. There is going to be a temptation to be a little bit dictatorial and to lay down the law and say, my way or the highway. Sun's in the third house. That's good for fulfilling ambitions. Venus and Mercury soften that particular energy a little bit, and the moon moving into Libra, it'll make it a little bit more positive about relationships, although relationship partners will seem a little bit sparse or uh, difficult uh, to reason with. And career-wise, it looks like a fairly good month for Aries, but again, you have to watch the suspense a little bit. That Rahu is going to be in your 12th house for another uh, about another half year, so just be careful with spending. Mars and Jupiter are in Taurus together. That will bring up a lot of issues with relationships. A lot of hidden problems with relationships will show up. But there'll be a lot of financial gain and gains from two relationship partners. Sun's in the second house. This sign will be more aggressive than it normally is. Venus and Mercury will make it seem more polite, paradoxically. Moon and Ketu, more moody, less agreeable, and Saturn's in the 10th, a lot of work. Rahu's in the 11th. Again, don't trust your friends with Rahu in the 11th. For Gemini, Gemini has Sun in the first house. So this sign will start to show some kind of a glow, some kind of happy activity, but there have been a lot of attacks on this particular sign over the past few weeks. And that's, I think, mainly because of Jupiter in the 12th and Sun in the first, which is not really a friendly sign for the friendly planet for this rising sign. Sun's the third house lord. It can make a person susceptible to attacks on their personality or attacks on their character. The sixth house lord is Mars. Mars is in the 12th house. It can give hidden attacks. There have been open attacks from friends or from acquaintances over the past week, but those will start to calm down just a little bit. Venus and Mercury are in the second house. There'll be a little bit of confusion in communications, especially romantic communications, especially the next month or so, and a little bit of confusion about Ketu in the fourth house. That's not a bad combination. Moon moves to the fifth house, so that's better. So it'll give more potential for romantic involvement if you're interested, and also money opportunities. Seventh house lord is Jupiter is in the 12th house, so long-term relationships aren't that favorable right now. They will be next spring or so. Saturn rules the 11th house. I'm sorry, the eighth house and the ninth house, and growing towards research in spiritual and metaphysical subjects. Rahu's in the 10th house. The sign will have a bit of fame, but again, there can be attacks from people or Cancer. Venus and Mercury are in the first house. Neither planet is particularly welcome in Cancer, but it does make the sign a little bit softer, a little bit more vulnerable than usual. Mars is actually the best planet for this particular house. So, in terms of getting even with people who've attacked you or taking more of an aggressive stance in your life, it's actually a good time to do that. Just don't go around killing people. Um, and that's not meant as a joke. Just don't go around attacking people. I should strike that. I know it's going to be polite. I'm not advocating anybody do that. Um, Moon and K2 are in the third house, so there'll be a strong will to overcome anxieties and overcome personal insecurities. As a matter of fact, a lot of your personal insecurities will go away after tomorrow. Um, Saturn's in the eighth house, so again, it's a restructuring of a person's life. This is going to be a persistent issue really until around March of next year. Excuse me. Rahu's in the ninth house, so there'll be changes in luck, sudden unexpected changes in luck. So some days you'll be really, really up, other days you'll be really, really down. But just go with it. Actually, the next couple of days are good times to make contacts for new opportunities, because the Lord of Rahu is both direct and the Lord is in the 11th house of gains. There can be some confidence problems, though, for this particular sign because of the sun being in the 12th house. Um, for Leo has Venus and Mercury in the 12th house. That's not a bad placement. It's good for saving money. Sun's in the 11th house. It'll give you new friends, especially with the government. And Moon is in the second house. It will give increased notoriety, increased contact with the public. Mars is in the 10th house along with Jupiter. That will supercharge this rising sign over the next month or so. Okay, next 2 months actually. So essentially, if you have something you want to get done over the next 2 months, definitely set out to do it for Leos. We have Saturn in the seventh house. It can give some unexpected setbacks. Rahu's in the eighth. It can give conspiracies against these individuals, to be honest, but they are revealed or they come out in the open when Rahu's stationary direct like it is right now. The ninth house lord is with the 10th house, and the 10th house lord is in the 12th house. So this is good for fame or recognition overseas. It's good for investments. Uh, it can give some, but again, that's really not a significant factor for this rising sign. For Virgo, we have Moon and K2 in the first house. K2 aspects Rahu in this chart. The Moon leaves the sign tomorrow. So especially over the next couple of days of the week, you'll see some calming down, some more productive periods. And let's see, Saturn's in the sixth, good for overcoming enemies, good for eliminating debts. Rahu's in the seventh house, relationship partners will be difficult to please. Mars and Jupiter are in the ninth. That's a good combination for luck through aggressive studying or action. Sun's in the 10th house, good for career and notoriety, good for financial gains, too, for Virgos. Okay, so this is roughly September 15th through October 15th. So remember, in Vedic astrology, the signs are different. For Libra, the moon goes into Libra tomorrow, on the 14th. It's generally going to be a good month for the sign career-wise. Some past projects and some creative projects you had left behind, you'll be able to get back to. It'll give a certain amount of career success, although there will be a feeling of going backwards before going forwards until around mid-August. And essentially, Mars and Jupiter being in the eighth house can give all sorts of unexpected financial gains, which is actually pretty good. Rahu and Saturn's in the fifth house. This is not a bad placement. It's one of the luckier placements for the sign. It's retrograde. So again, you will be covering some material you've already covered before, maybe reviewing some things you've forgotten. Rahu's in the sixth house. This is good again for overcoming enemies, but they will be tough enemies. Okay. Ketu's in the 12th, good for spiritual life, but also potential for overspending. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Mars and Jupiter. Make the sign more aggressive, less willing to surrender, to give in, as I've said before. We'll see what happens when Mars goes closer to Uranus, so see if Uranus has an effect. Saturn is in the fourth house. It can indicate a strong desire to hold on to position, to hold like a position, whether it's a belief or an actual position, excuse me. Rahu's in the fifth. That's good for some past life credit coming through, but it can also make you smarter for a limited period of time, but there'll be consequences connected with it. So there'll be increases in intelligence, then perceptions of decreases in intelligence, is what I'm saying. Sun is in, and also some problems with family support. Sun is in the eighth house. That's never good for holding on to a position, but it can give some unexpected booms or windfalls. Venus and Mercury are in the ninth house. This is a lucky placement for this sign over the next month, but again, it will feel like it's swimming against the current, especially when Mercury goes retrograde. And the moon in K2 in the 11th house, a lot of betrayal from friends. From Sagittarius, we have Saturn in the third house, which will give us more courage, more ambition. Rahu's in the fourth. This gives a strong desire to change governance or to change leadership, and also to change direction. Mars and Jupiter are in the sixth house, so it seems like a time over the next year when this sign will be struggling a little bit, especially over the next couple of months. Sun is in the seventh house. Relationships with others are important right now. Venus, Mercury, some potential for windfall. So the stock market, people investing in the stock market. The stock market is doing very well right now. This is the United States rising sign. Venus and Mercury are in the eighth house. That's why it's doing so well. Okay. And you will see a little bit of a fallback during the next week, but this sign will be doing, the stock market will be doing comparatively well, I think, until really the end of the summertime. For this sign, career life will seem confused, direction in life will seem quite confused. So that's one of the things, and there'll be a loss of status, basically, for this sign over the next few months. It will come back again next year. That will be an issue. Capricorn has Saturn in the second house, good for income inflow. Saturn retrograde, some projects, you'll pick up some projects you left behind to make money. Rahu's in the third house, a lot of ambition for the sign. Mars is in the fifth house, good for financial gains, especially from real estate. Sun's in the sixth house, you may have the government looking at you for more money. Venus and Mercury, potentially good for relationship life for the sign, although relationship partners will be a little bit fickle or unreliable. And Moon and two are hovering between K2's in the ninth house, so that can give unexpected falls or um, difficulties, but Moon will move into Libra, and that will give career success to the sign starting tomorrow. Saturn is in the first house for Aquarius. This makes a change in the way of operation for this sign, somewhat inevitable. It has to adjust and it has to innovate and it has to put up with reversals. So that'll be over the next 4 to 5 months or so. Rahu's in the second house, and Rahu's in the second house. That will give strong desire to have what it doesn't have. Mars and Jupiter are in the fourth house. That can give a change in status or maybe even some difficulty in relationship life. So fights over who's right. Sun's in the fifth house. That's actually a good placement for the sign. It'll give good luck from the government. It'll give status. Venus and Mercury in the sixth, not the best for this particular sign because these are the two best planets for Aquarius, but Venus will move to the seventh house within about 3 weeks, and Mercury will turn retrograde over the next 3 weeks. So you'll see a change in fortunes in this sign in about a month's time, but for now it'll have to struggle to make ends meet. We have K2 in the eighth house, a lot of investigation behind the scenes, and Moon will move into the ninth house, so luck will change for the sign over the next week or so. We have Rahu in the first house for Pisces. This is the last sign. And Mars and Jupiter will make it very aggressive, very sure of itself, very dynamic. This is a lucky combination, even though it's in the third house, because you have the 10th Lord with the second Lord with the ninth Lord. So that's a good combination. So career life will improve. Sun's in the fourth house, Lord of the sixth house. So enemies will come from home. K2's in the seventh house. There have probably been some communications breakdowns with relationship partners and business partners. That will continue over the next few months, but thankfully the moon will be in the same sign with K2 over the next few days. So you'll be able to have some clearer communication and maybe even probe into the reasons why you're not communicating well. Saturn's in the 12th house. You have to be careful about over expenditure. This discussion probably went way over time. I apologize for that. So let's look at the star map and how it's interacting in the sky. We have Mercury going over the Hawaiian Islands, Mars line hitting over here as well. So it looks like there'll be some violence or maybe even some earthquake activity over Vancouver or British Columbia. I always get confused with that part of Canada. Over British Columbia. I think I've also assigned Jupiter is really close to California and Oregon and Washington and even Idaho. So that will give some potential for violence in those states and in California. We have Rahu moving down over our friends in Nebraska, Wyoming, Nevada, not Nevada, Wyoming, um, Montana, and down between, roughly between Arizona and New Mexico. So that Rahu line will cause some panic or some scandals, some election scandals to break out there. Um, Moon is not sure why I said election scandals. It just came to me, so I'll just take it. Moon is over Texas, so we've seen a lot of flooding in Houston lately. So that's actually the Moon K2 conjunction. K2 is responsible for all sorts of natural catastrophes. So floods are one of them. Also, it's a kapha or a water planet, which is not really discussed readily, even though it's a fiery planet. It's a fire and water planet, a fire and water entity. So it's kapha. So it's kind of bizarre, but it'll cause all kinds of damage. There's a sun line running through really Pennsylvania. This is why I think Trump got hit at that particular rally. The sun line is very close to where he was. There's a sun line over Vermont and moving into Montreal, moving on into Canada. So, and all the way down the East Coast, down into Florida, the western side of Florida, and down into Nicaragua, Panama. Not Panama, but Nicaragua and Guatemala. Panama has a Venus line running through it, so we're looking at intense government action in these parts of the world, okay, and also with this Venus line, some potential for flooding in Panama. We have a Mercury line running through and and a Mars line. So there could be violence in Guyana and even in Venezuela, Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina. And it will be in the news. It should be in the news. There's a Jupiter line running through Brazil. Jupiter is going to be affected by Mars now, and this is Saturn line running through eastern Brazil. So there have been some attempts to censor speech in Brazil. This will probably show sort of a doubling down in that particular effort. There's a Rahu line coming close to the Azores and close to down here, I believe it's Cape Verde down here. And you have, so there'll be some kind of panic connected with those areas, although I'm not sure which. Rahu's in Pisces, so maybe some kind of water damage or some kind of natural event. There's a moon line going over West Africa, coming down close to the Ivory Coast, and also there's, what is this line? I need to move this little guy on. There's a sun line, so more government authority being exercised in Great Britain, Ireland, Spain, up through Algeria, and also there's a Mars line, so there'll probably be more arguing and more fighting in France, all the way down to Libya, down into Central Africa. The Mercury line will actually show some aggravation or some civil unrest near Italy, but more so near Greece. And there's an intersecting Jupiter-Mars line right there. So this will be some kind of ideological struggle. There'll be an ideological struggle in Germany and Poland too over the next few months. We have a Jupiter line going over Egypt. And again, we're seeing more ideological struggles all the way down to Madagascar. Over here we have, yeah, I'm not crazy about that Mars line and going through Greece and Eastern Europe. That's not good. So that can lead to more earthquake events, but it can also lead to more violence against governments. Let's see now. There's a Saturn line running right next to Ukraine, and there's a Sun line running right next to that. So that indicates to me an increase in tensions in Ukraine and in between Ukraine and Russia in particular. Iran does have a Saturn line running through it, so that can mean a popular leader will be elected. It can also mean they'll be stopped from taking power. So we'll see what happens there. And there's a Sun line running through Afghanistan and Pakistan, which has really been they really and also Rahu line, they've really been hit hard. Pakistan is near collapse. Okay, so that's just to let you know. So that's going to present problems for India and for Iran and for China, to be honest with you, although it's closer to this Tibetan plateau than it is to the main Chinese area, but it will still cause problems for them. Venus is a Venus Rahu line over here. This is in Tibetan plateau, so there may be some strikes or civil unrest here. I'm not sure about that one. And you have a moon and a Venus line, so there should be some more flooding in Ladakh and Bangladesh. The other lines we have to worry about are Mercury and Venus lines surrounding Malaysia and also Vietnam, because this can give a lot of flooding in those parts of the world. Mars line off China, heading down into Borneo. So you'll see a lot of bad weather down there, also in the Philippines, and also some potential for bad weather in Western Australia. And Jupiter is close to Korea, Japan, hitting the middle of Australia, and is accompanied by Saturn. So there'll be a conflict between the old way of doing things and new ways of doing things for those countries, especially Japan and Australia. There's a Rahu line going over here and a Sun line going over here near New Zealand. So essentially, Rahu and Sun lines indicate dissatisfaction with the existing governments. There's also a moon line closer to New Zealand, so this could indicate a change in governments or more of a spotlight shown on New Zealand. So that's it for this week. Sorry it was a bit patchworky at the beginning, and I appreciate everybody tuning in to hear me talk about these things that are coming up. It looks like the next couple of months are going to be really significant. So be prepared for a little bit of a wild ride, especially with the Jupiter-Mars conjunction. So thoughts and prayers out to both contenders for the presidency. I want to see what happens. Turn out well for them and for the country. That's, I can't say any more than that. This is really not unexpected, but still disturbing nonetheless. Okay, so I have to be honest. I'm not surprised, but I'm a little bit worried now too that I was correct. Although again, the timing was a little bit off. And so I'll see you next week. Have a great week. Don't get angry. Don't get upset. This too shall pass. Also, it's an energetic time now that Moon and K2 have are separating. So you can use that energy to good use to get things done, to investigate things, to study things, to work harder to make your life better. Okay, so it's not entirely negative. It depends on you and how you handle this particular set of conditions that are thrown in front of you. Okay, all right. Stay strong, stay brave. I love you all. Thank you very much for watching. And if you like, please subscribe, like, and share. And if anyone wants to come on the show, or if anybody's interested in talking astrology with me, please just send me a message. Okay? Thanks a lot, folks. It's always a pleasure, and God bless you all. Bye, everyone. Namaste.